Kiwis as a whole are really interested about their homes and their renovation projects. And this is one story about a couple who are building a new home in Martinborough in the Wairarapa. My name's Darren Hunter and I'm an architectural designer based in Kapiti. I've met Sue and Matthias through a mutual friend of ours in Wellington about building an eco-home. An eco-home is something that I had been interested in but only knew the basic principles of how it all went together. I was really up for the challenge on how to put this dream into reality. So with collaboration with Dave Kennedy Builders, we came up with an idea of putting in a price to design and build Sue and Matthias a new home. Sue and Matthias had lived in Switzerland for a number of years and returned to New Zealand to put their dream of an eco-home into practice. Hello, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Great to see you, come on in.
Very nice.
So I've got your brief here in front of me and let's just talk over what we're going to do on the house. There's quite a few questions, but thanks for the opportunity to meet today.
Yeah.
And first off is your budget. The budget of $500,000 including GST will dictate some of the materials and some of our choices and selections that we're able to make, obviously based on price, but ultimately the eco factors of it are very important to you both.
Yes, I think this is the most important point in the whole thing. It's what we can afford, what we're willing to pay, and we don't have more money, so and we don't want to live forever in debt, so that's the bottom line. There's also one thing about this figure: it has to be inclusive GST. I'm used to getting a figure on a bill, and that's what I have to pay, and not add different taxes on it. So 500,000 inclusive GST is the price of the house.
I think it should be doable to build a house with that sum.
Sue and I met in Switzerland, in Basel, in my hometown.
I studied in England at the Guildhall for a few years and then moved on to Switzerland where there was other good singing teachers and the Basel Conservatorium of Music where I studied opera, and that's where I met Matthias in Switzerland. I joined a choir to meet people and I had to help out singing tenor at one point, and I stood next to Matthias, and yeah, it went from there. I couldn't speak German, so he was helping me find the bar numbers and pointing things out to me, and yeah. When we first arrived back in New Zealand, it was 25 years away from New Zealand for me. We made a big tour of New Zealand for about 6 months, tripped around here, there and everywhere, looking at places, trying to decide where we wanted to live, what we wanted to do. We had no real fixed plans.
I don't think we had an urgent desire to build an eco house. What we wanted was to build something sensible, something sustainable, something that respects nature and the land, and that made it quite obvious or quite early on in the process we realized that we have to use a lot of what everybody calls eco features.
You put 2 bedrooms, so 2 bedrooms is a relatively small house by New Zealand standards. What's the reasons behind that?
We're only 2 people. We don't want to make more than there has to be in the house.
Right.
We need 1 bedroom for ourselves and 1 possibly for guests.
Right.
The way that the sun will come through these windows,
Yes.
so this is the side that's facing towards that corner of the boundary.
There's a lot of functional things that we need to incorporate into the house. Have you considered what the house will look like?
I think for us the most important thing is that it functions. Yes,
We don't want to build ugly.
We definitely don't want to build ugly, but it has to do what we want from it, and the design is secondary.
It's getting real. It's getting real.
It's a bit scary as well.
It's a bit scary, yeah. It's a big decision to build a house, and for anybody.
Slab will go down and you'll still be freaking that it's really small. But believe me, experience tells me that once the walls and the roof go up, you go, okay. So
Yeah.
you've got quite a few eco principles on your brief. What makes you want to build an eco house?
I think for us, we want to build a house that's there for a long time. We want to have it comfortable. We want to have it nice and warm, insulated. We want to like to come home at night. We also think we should be a bit careful with the resources we use, so we would like you to have local materials as far as possible. We would like to be able to use recycled materials if that's possible, but also we would like to have properly insulated walls. I do hate those drafty old Kiwi houses that are damp. I'm not used to anything like that in Switzerland, from Switzerland.
With the photovoltaic, are you guys aware that you have to have some lifestyle changes to be able to manage the electricity generation that you guys are creating from your solar panels?
I don't think that we're going to need to make too many compromises in our lifestyle.
One of the materials that you've mentioned on your brief is the use of concrete. It's not typically associated with eco-type housing, but it has got great thermal mass.
I think for a solar passive house, you need big heat sinks, and we would like to have marble and stone everywhere, but I think what we can afford is concrete, realistically. And we've just read recently that there is, instead of using only cement in concrete, there's a byproduct from burning processes which is called fly ash, which is at least as good as cement or makes concrete even harder. And it uses, since it's a byproduct, it doesn't use so much CO2. I think if concrete companies over here offer that would be a great thing.
I see an eco house or eco principles being based on two things. Firstly is the use of materials and how you accumulate those materials. The energy required to accumulate those materials, for argument's sake, chopping down trees locally versus importing timber from overseas. So you use those materials that you source locally, and then more importantly, once those materials are assembled into a house or into a project, what the energy consumption is to actually run or drive that house. On your brief you mentioned using timber joinery for the windows and doors.
Or for those double and triple glazed windows, we use the big window panes we have, that those sturdy European wooden frames, we trust them more than those thin metal frames.
Right. Okay. The timber joinery in general is a better insulator. It allows the heat to be retained within the house, so that's a good aspect to keep within the brief, and we'll have to find a joiner that can make joinery of that quality. So, as you know, Cameron, our brief is for an eco home. The biggest requirement for that is double glazing to retain the heat, but also windows that actually seal nice and tight and stop the cold air getting in and out. Is this product going to suit our needs?
Absolutely. The problem with eco housing, really and truly, is the glazing and the windows and the doors. I mean, you can put more insulation in the walls, under the slab, in the roof, but it's a very major problem to achieve the required standard of insulation in the windows.
Right.
And these windows are designed to do exactly that.
Right. So Dave, last time we were here, Sue and Matthias helped us set out the house. We've had all this topsoil and grass ripped off the top, but our biggest issue at the moment is we've got an existing tank sitting there, and our gutter line for the house needs to be at the same height as a tank, or higher.
Yep.
So when the water goes down the pipe, it goes up into the tank,
Yep.
and obviously the water gets used in the house. But I'm a bit worried about this ground being all over the place.
Oh, well, we'll get 4 corners and get some different heights, and then see where we're at from there.
Okay. The house is critical to sit out of the ground high enough to allow the water to flow from the roof into the tanks. And in addition to that, we need to have the engineering requirements large foundations which have compacted ground, then concrete slabs and reinforcing and additional slabs to make the whole structure work. So overall we're trying to balance between the height of the tank and what the engineer needs us to do. Of course we don't want to dig out too much out of the ground because it's time and money, and we also don't want to be sticking out of the ground too far because that's also time and money. The lowest point here, and what was that,
About 300 mil lower than that.
Okay, but more importantly, we need to use the water off the roof to fill those big tanks that are going to be there. There's actually going to be another tank put in, so unless the water runs downhill and back into that tank, they've got no water. So it's critical that the house is in the right position. And as a consequence of that rural section, they've got a trickle feed water supply supplied by the council. Now typically your rates would be $500 more to be supplied water from the council. Sue and Matthias chose not to be connected to the council supply and put in tanks probably to the extent of about $5,000 for the tanks. So by saving $500 a year on their rates, that will ultimately pay for itself in 10 years to recoup the $5,000 they've invested in the water tanks.
We've got the drive dug out and some base course in, ready to go for bringing in big trucks and things, and the concrete trucks and crane and all that sort of stuff. Got a service trench dug just to get the telecom down there.
I think we chose Hunter Architecture because this is a guy we met that actually was prepared to work for us and listen to our ideas, do the research, do the hard yards.
I've had very little involvement in building and designing eco homes per se. I've got a basic knowledge of eco principles, but it really comes down to what the client wants to pursue in regards to those types of eco principles. For argument's sake, do they want a irrigation system for their garden? Do they want a solar panel system? Do they want thermal mass? There's all these questions around what is eco.
We don't see how the house looks in the end. I mean, we've seen a picture of it, we've seen the plans, we've seen a run through, but it's nothing to touch yet.
We're going to put the line at the back of the house, and so we can dig our septic tank hole, and we've got to be at least 3 or 4 metres away from the septic tank, so we're not sort of undermining the foundations later on. And the council also have asked us to move the house from 9 metres to 10 metres off the side boundary. So it's changed all our dimensions. So our dimensions are now on the computer, right down to the last millimetre, and the jump from 9 to 10 metres was a council requirement. I was unaware of it, I thought it was only 5, so never assume, and we've got to move it to 10. So it's not a big drama because it's only a metre. From the front to the back is fine, it's just the side dimensions that we have to re-verify. Because it's a rural block and it's a 4-acre section, every council has different offsets. So it's probably more to do with when that's future neighbour builds, they're going to be a certain distance off each other, so you haven't got one house real close to another. So effectively 10 metres off our boundary will also apply to their boundary, so they'll be 10 metres also. So there's at least 20 metre gap between 2 properties. Well, Matthias and Sue have arrived.
We've actually got a true north
Oh, you've actually got
facing
the...
aspect. Yep. So as long as the survey plans are right, which they will be, it'll be facing true north.
That'll be excellent.
Yeah.
It's buried the deepest will be the one that we actually fill first from the roof, and, and that's one becomes a secondary tank.
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah, it was easy to get the truck manoeuvre around on the site before you start getting the building up.
You need a lot of manoeuvring space, so it's good that there's nothing in the way to stop them accessing it. So, and the weather's fantastic. The ground's dried out heaps. There's a lot of weight, 7.5 tonnes in one of those tanks. This is a hole for the septic tank. We're just levelling it off so the tank sits nice and flat on the bottom. Then we'll put some pea metal or some sand in the bottom, so we don't have any of these, the likes of these big rocks potentially penetrating through the bottom of the septic tank. Put all that in and find it's got a leak. Not a good look.
Unfortunately, New Zealanders are not used to build houses with cellars, otherwise we would have built a wine cellar or a cellar.
If we could have afforded it, we would have loved to have had a wine cellar.